welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and we're here again with another great episode of Kentucky History. Joining me again is Gabriel Neville. How you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be back.
Well, you got a lot to talk about today because you finished your book. So we're going to get into that. But before we get into that, tell us about your Kentucky connection and all that. There's the book.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been working on that book for many, many years. I talked about that some last time you had me on. It was a real labor of love. It was kind of a hobby that turned into an obsession that turned into a book. So I'm relieved to have it done. My wife is even more relieved for me to have it done. And it's gotten pretty good reviews. It's the story of one regiment from the American Revolution. You don't get too many of those. You get regimental histories from the Civil War, from World War II, but there are fewer of them going back to the Revolution. Mostly just because they're a lot harder to do. You have to find somebody crazy enough like me to do one. And I was fortunate. There's some good material out there that had not been used before, or had not been thoroughly scoured before. And I've got a big fat book about the 8th Virginia Regiment, and a big chunk of it is about Kentucky. A lot of these guys were in Kentucky before the war. Even more of them went to Kentucky after the war, and you could even argue that they were fighting the war so they could go to Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in our previous episode, we talked about James Knox and a few others and their importance and their part in the Virginia 8th. So, like, just for some more, like, how long did it take you to write the book? Or
Well, it depends on how you count it. So I started researching the topic, which is different from writing a book, right?
yeah.
Back in the late 1990s, right?
Oh wow.
And I started thinking seriously about writing a book probably in the mid 2000s. My wife reminds me that initially I wanted to write a children's book.
Okay.
And then, it's like, sports statistics or baseball cards. The more you get into something, the more obsessed you get. And now it's a 468-page book. Yeah.
Well, I have to ask, what was the direction for the children's book? If that was.
Well, so the reasons I got into this particular regiment are, well, there's a few, but one of them is I have an ancestor from Pittsburgh who was in one of the companies, and I don't know a lot about him, but I thought it would be fun to have a book about him for my kids to read. Now,
Okay.
my oldest is in college and not reading children's books anymore, but he's got a copy of this book, so
That's good. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, real quickly, I'm going to share the we can talk about how to get the book, and let's see. Hold on, there we go. How to get the book, and so forth, and we'll remind people at the end. So, if you want a copy of the book, how do people get it?
So it's on Amazon. You can order just about anywhere, Barnes and Noble. I do have a page which you're showing right now on my website, 8thvirginia.com, number 8th Virginia.com. And right there, I keep track of sellers that are offering it at a discount. The Amazon price changes every day. I don't understand their system. It's crazy that sometimes it changes 2 times in a day. The Fort Plain Museum is a Revolution-focused museum in New York that supports itself by book sales, and they're selling it $10 off. So you buy it there, you get a discount, and you're supporting a good cause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all pretty good. And again, people can check that out. 8thvirginia.com. If people want to get that as well. So, where do we start with the 8th Virginia Regiment? Where does it even begin?
Well, it was authorized by the Virginia Convention, the extra legal revolutionary government of Virginia in December of 1775. They appointed Peter Muhlenberg the colonel, Abraham Bowman, who became important in Kentucky, the lieutenant colonel, and Peter Helfenstein, who died during the war, major. Those names have one thing in common: they're all German. They were from the Shenandoah Valley, and the very English government, or I should say, revolutionary leadership of the revolution in Virginia. They weren't quite sure that these Germans were going to be, real cool about, rebelling against the king. But they figured,
Uh-huh.
well, if we've got German field officers, maybe people will show up, and it worked. So,
Yeah.
so about,
um,
about half, a little less than half of the regiment was actually German, I think.
uh-huh.
So, but a lot of these guys had been in that year in 1775 in Kentucky. We're kind of working backward here, but uh,
Yeah.
uh, many of them had fought in Lord Dunmore's War at the Battle of Point Pleasant, uh,
Mhm.
which made Kentucky's more or less safe for Western settlement. Uh, it had become legal with the Treaty of Fort Stanwix in 1768, but definitely not safe. The only people out there were long hunters and other people, uh, you know, who were brave or foolish enough to go out there.
Mhm.
The Battle of Point Pleasant resulted in an armistice with the Shawnee that made the Ohio River the effective boundary. Um, so now that it was sort of safe to go out to Kentucky, you had a lot of guys go out there to look around and make what were called preemption claims. If you built a cabin and planted some corn, you could claim a certain amount of
Claim land.
acreage as a settlement and get it for free. Now, the definition of cabin was a little bit fuzzy, right? Eight
Yeah.
logs
Yeah.
piled on top of each other might have been a cabin, right?
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Not somewhere you wanted to actually live.
right. Well, I mean, they did eventually, but at the beginning,
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
wanted to get some land. And I mean, so people did move out there. I mean, Harrodsburg was founded at that time, right? Um, but you had a lot of guys just going out there to kind of nose around and see, what was out there and whether they wanted to move their families there. Acquiring land was really the only way to become prosperous. There are no banks, no stock markets. I mean, the only way to get wealthy was to acquire land. So everybody wanted it. Um, so uh, uh, so Boonesboro was founded actually right at that time. St. Asaph's was founded at that time. Harrodsburg was a
Mhm.
little bit older, but it was abandoned
Mhm.
during
Yeah.
Dunmore's War. And there's an 1847 history of Kentucky that notes that there were still some beech trees standing out by Bowling Green that had 5 or 6 names carved into the bark. Uh,
Mhm.
all of them relate either are the names of, or it's a family name of guys in the 8th Virginia Regiment. The names are Neville, no relation to me, Height, 2 Bowman brothers, including the lieutenant colonel of the 8th, a couple of long hunters with the last name Drake, and Thomas Slaughter, who was the brother of an 8th Virginia guy. Um, uh, the Bowmans and their cousin Isaac Height actually formed a land company, like a private entity called Height
Yeah.
Bowman and Company, and they acquired land uh, east of Harrodsburg, what became Bowman Station
Yeah.
at this time. So, and then another war started.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So and that's kind of the way I'll say gossip, but the gossip of Kentucky and the land. Lord Dunmore's war really kind of fueled that gossip or discussion of getting into Kentucky. And I mean, like you said, if you the way to high fortune was acquiring as much land as you could, um, and that's what people sought out. You know? So whenever once we get to kind of the expansion, or well, let's say so in Lord Dunmore's War, how many Virginia eights were in there?
I think I counted up a number, but I don't have it in my head.
Hmm.
Um, a pretty good number. The Battle of Point Pleasant was not the only uh, action in the war. There was a foray into Ohio before that. I'm blanking on the name of it. It was a raid on a Shawnee settlement. Couple of the officers participated in that. Uh, a bunch of guys were in at Point Pleasant. Um, uh, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but there were two divisions uh, headed west before the Battle of Point Pleasant. One came up through West Virginia up the Kanawha River under Andrew Lewis. So this would be guys like James Knox and others from what was then Fincastle County, down sort of in the vicinity of the Cumberland Gap. Some guys from what is now Botetourt and Greenbrier counties in Virginia. A few guys from Culpeper. They're the ones that got into the battle. There was another wing that came down the Ohio River from Pittsburgh with the governor, with Lord Dunmore himself, and
Hmm.
they didn't get there. It's a little more complicated, but in time for the battle. And there were a bunch of
Yeah,
8th Virginia guys in that wing too.
yeah. And now this is so when you're talking about the 8th Virginia Regiment, I instantly think of the Revolutionary War.
Mhm.
And we'll get to that. But like this was would they be part of the Virginia militia overall, like prior to, um, how does it fall under the England control? Is it still just the Virginia 8th?
Yeah.
Um,
So it's actually a good question with an answer that's not too complicated, but it's complicated enough that people get tripped up. So
mhm.
so uh, in colonial times and even today, technically, every man in Virginia is a member of the militia. I'm a member of the Virginia militia, right? I'm just
Mhm.
never going to get activated. um,
Thankfully.
so, uh, but back then, if there were no police, there was no standing army. So if there was an emergency, they would muster, and literally everybody showed up and stood in a line, and they would ask for volunteers, and volunteers would step forward. That's where that phrase comes from, that expression. And if not enough men stepped forward, they would have a draft, and you would have activated militia, right? Or they would say embodied militia. But
Mhm.
when people say, my ancestor was a member of the militia, the proper answer is, of course he was. Everybody was, right?
Yeah.
So activated militia is another thing, um, but they would be activated for weeks or a couple of months. Um, when the war started, and I'm going to skip like Minutemen and other complicated examples. When the war started, Virginia authorized regular full-time professional troops, or what were called regulars.
Mhm.
Before independence, these would have been called provincial troops. After independence, they were called state troops, right? Because they were no longer provinces of the
Okay.
crown.
Yeah.
The Illinois Regiment, which is very important for Kentucky history, was a state battalion, a state regiment. They were not Continental soldiers.
Mhm.
The 8th Virginia started as provincials, uh, but then they were authorized by the province or the state of Virginia, but then they were taken into the Continental line, taken into congressional pay, and then they were Continental soldiers. And that happened actually retroactively in the summer of 1776.
Okay.
So,
All
did
right.
I keep that simple enough? It,
Yeah, I got it.
it trips people up. A lot of people think, well,
Yeah.
if you're not in the Continental line, you're militia. But it's
Mhm.
a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's just kind of what I was kind of I guess what I wanted to cleared up there because that makes a lot more sense. So the revolution
Mhm.
starts, and um, where does the Virginia 8th line up? in the
Well,
Revolution?
so they uh, rendezvoused at Suffolk, Virginia, which is way down in the southeast near Hampton Roads, Norfolk, in the spring of 1776. They carried rifles, right? Um,
Yeah.
Unlike every other Virginia regiment, which primarily carried muskets. Each of them had a couple of rifle companies for skirmishing, but the 8th Virginia was entirely rifles. Um, Many of them carried their own rifles. Some of them had to have them made for them. But they were, by all accounts, the best equipped, uh, best dressed, best armed regiment in the Virginia line. And Major General Charles Lee recognized that. And when uh, intelligence came that the British were headed to Charleston, he said, "Well, I need the best troops I can get." And he took the 8th Virginia out of
Hmm.
the state. Now, let's rewind a couple minutes. Remember, I said they were provincials, they were not Continental
Hmm.
soldiers. So leaving the state was not their job, right? Their job was to
Oh, yeah,
protect Virginia only.
yeah.
So a lot of them got really mad, including particularly the Fincastle guys, which means Kentucky guys in part, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because Kentucky was part of Fincastle County then, and a lot of them desert, a lot of them quit, and their neighbors thought they were justified, and a bunch of them left in order to participate in the 1776 Cherokee War, which was happening on the frontier at that time um, under William Christian. So you actually got one guy who, when he applied for a pension, and he gives his affidavit, he starts talking about enlisting in the 8th Virginia, and says he marched to Williamsburg, and then he's sort of like, "Yeah, never mind," it scribbles that part out, and then just goes straight to the Cherokee War.
No delete or backspace.
Yeah. So the 8th Virginia is at Charleston, and then they a bunch of them die from malaria, and they come back north, and they're at Brandywine and Germantown, Valley Forge. Their 2-year enlistments expired at Valley Forge. You
Hmm.
got new recruits, some guys re-enlisted, and then they were at Monmouth, some other stuff, and then back to Charleston for the siege, and they surrendered and ended up prisoners. Um, that's the simple version, but
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
career of the 8th Virginia.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, how many? I mean, you may not know this right off. How many total people, men were in Virginia over time? Because people enlist and join all throughout, right?
I think from memory, I think I counted it up to 1,047.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's quite a
so
bit. Um,
a full company had 68 enlisted men, plus 4 sergeants, a fifer, a drummer, a captain, 2 lieutenants, and an ensign for 78 men. Times 10, there were 10 companies at the beginning.
okay, wow, yeah. Um, well, that is quite a bit. Yeah. So, a pretty. Well, let me ask you this too. It popped in my head there. If you're looking at the difference between the 8th Virginia versus other regiments, anything stand out the most that would be different?
Well, they were all
Um,
rifles to start with.
yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of them had actual combat experience, which people from Williamsburg or Fair, the Eastern Virginia didn't have. But militia duty for most of Virginia was a social activity, right? But these
Yeah.
guys in the West had actually fought a war, right? So
Hmm.
they knew what they were doing when it came to uh, killing people or getting shot at, right?
Yeah.
Um, there's the ethnic thing, right? So lots of Germans, lots of Scotch Irish. The east of the Blue Ridge Mountains, everybody was English for the most part,
Hmm.
um, and they wanted to go west after the
Yeah.
war, right?
Yeah.
What I like to say is they weren't upset about tea and taxes. They wanted to go west, and
Yeah.
the crown had made that difficult for them.
Hmm. Hmm. And, I mean, so would it be safe to say that they were probably some of the better fighters than um, others?
Well, Charles Lee
Uh,
thought so. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
so that I can give you another complicated answer on that. At the beginning, I think so, right?
Hmm.
But as the war went on and people died and got discharged and that sort of thing, they started to have to lower standards in recruiting. So the
Mm-hmm.
quality of Continental soldiers decreased over time. Interestingly, though, when Yorktown came around,
Yeah.
um, it was an all hands on deck operation, right? I mean, every single man they could find who could carry a gun, they tried to get him to
Mm-hmm.
head to Williamsburg. And they put militia under Continental commanders. I mean, whatever it took. And a lot of these guys sort of came out of retirement, and these were experienced combat veterans who had done their time and
Mm-hmm.
gone home. Um, so yeah, no, these early guys were invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they start heading west, right? And what lies west is Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
So
how does that go?
so so just a reminder that Kentucky is Virginia, Ohio is Virginia, most of Minnesota is Virginia at this time, right? And these guys want to go west. Uh, the British sit in forts at Detroit, at Niagara, Michilimackinac, up along the Great Lakes, and they are sending uh, Indian warriors, sometimes with small contingents of redcoats, sometimes even with a little bit of artillery, south to attack
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky. So you've got a bunch of these raids, and this is not Congress's problem. This is Virginia's problem, right?
Yeah.
There are usually some Continental troops at Fort Pittsburgh, but they're not really doing much to protect, Louisville.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is Virginia's problem. George Rogers Clark is the commander of the Illinois Regiment, which is tasked with protecting Virginia's west. There's a whole long story about him that we won't get into, um, but there are additional attempts to raise troops to protect the West. In 1780, I think, two Western battalions are ordered, raised. Our friend James Knox is to be commander of one,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Crockett is to be the commander of the other, both with the rank of lieutenant colonel. And there's this complicated statewide recruitment regime. So they're supposed to have men from all over Virginia. It doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But Knox has some men, and he's camped in Powell's Valley, down near the Cumberland Gap, protecting Virginia from whatever might come through the Cumberland Gap or the Moccasin Gap coming from the south.
Mm-hmm.
In the spring, after that cold 1779, 1780 winter, um, Virginia realizes that the recruitment scheme hasn't worked, and they merge those two battalions. So Knox's men go into Crockett's battalion because he was technically senior, and Knox is done.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of his military career. But they become so Knox's Western Battalion is a unit that if you sort of do the 200 level course on what Western military history you learn about.
Uh-huh.
They get sent to do a bunch of things, but end up attached to the Illinois Regiment with George Rogers Clark, um, and are involved in a number of fights. Um, then in the spring of 1781, Clark is made a general for the first time, and he's a Virginia general, not a Continental general, right? And he's given Governor Thomas Jefferson gives him a stack of blank commissions and says, go up to Pittsburgh and recruit a couple of cavalry units. So he goes up to Pittsburgh and he's trying to recruit. Um, is not terribly successful because there's a fight over that territory with Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania partisans don't want to enlist in a Virginia unit. So that
Virginia. Yeah.
that's we could do a whole show on that. Um, but a couple of 8th Virginia veterans join there, including this guy Thomas Ravenscraft, who becomes a lieutenant. Um, they float down the Ohio to Fort Nelson, Louisville,
Hmm. Yeah.
and are involved in a bunch of activity protecting the frontier. Uh, Another guy who's part of Crockett's Western Battalion, who was an 8th Virginia guy, is Captain John Chapman. He's killed when Joseph Brant invades Kentucky. Um, uh, Ravenscraft is there too, but he survives and is then tasked with helping evacuate settlers from Squire Boone's Station.
Hmm.
So that, if I understand right, that's also known as the Painted Stone Station out on the
Hmm.
Kentucky
Yep.
River. Um, uh, that operation is attacked on their way to Lynn's Station, and Ravenscraft is captured. He survives, but the Indians, I'm pretty sure these are Shawnee, they make him
Yeah.
run the gauntlet. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and that it's not like running the gauntlet in 5th grade, right?
No,
You're
no.
uh, this involves people trying to hit you with tomahawks, right? And
Yeah.
he, in fact, takes a tomahawk to the head and never completely heals. But he's
Not
taken
surprising.
prisoner. He's marched all the way up to Detroit, and then to Montreal, where he attempts to escape. Um, so this is what life is like for these guys when they are out on the frontier.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Tomahawk to the head is it's a hard one to
Ouch.
overcome.
Yeah,
No.
amazingly, he actually, despite never fully recovering, he actually led troops in the War of 1812 too.
Whoa.
Yeah, how about that?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a that's pretty impressive. Oh, geez. That's probably more impressive than Isaac Shelby leading troops.
Yeah, maybe it's
Oh,
hard to imagine what it was like to live back then.
yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about Ruddle Station too?
Sure. Yeah.
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 So Abraham Bowman, who was the first lieutenant colonel and the second colonel of the 8th Virginia, uh,
Mhm.
he gets released as a supernumerary officer. In other words, they have too many officers, not enough enlisted guys, but too many officers. So he's let go in 1778, and in 1779 he leads a big group of people to settle at Bowman Station. Um, Nearby, his sister Elizabeth uh, is married to Isaac Ruddle, and they established Ruddle Station. So you've got a whole bunch of Bowmans out on the frontier. John Bowman is the first
Yeah.
county lieutenant or militia commander of Kentucky County. You got Joseph Bowman and others out in the west. But the Ruddles are at Ruddle Station, and they get attacked in the same period when Ravenscraft is tomahawked, and the whole family's captured, and they are marched north to Detroit. Uh, Isaac and Elizabeth Ruddle are then taken to Montreal, but two of their boys are, uh, I don't know why historians always say it so nicely, adopted by the
Hmm.
Shawnee.
Hmm.
Now they're 4 years old and 7 years old, or 5 and 8, something like that. So this is Stephen and Abraham Ruddle. Uh, they are raised as Shawnee Indians. Uh, in the family of none other than the famous Tecumseh, uh, are become Indian warriors, they're fighting white
Hmm.
people all the way up to
Hmm.
Anthony Wayne in 1794. Um, after that, after the Battle of Fallen Timbers um, in 1794. The treaty at Greenville requires the Shawnee to release all of their prisoners, right? So, and that includes kids
Yeah.
who were
Yeah.
forcibly adopted 20 years prior. Uh,
Hmm.
and that includes Stephen and Abraham Ruddle. Now, Abraham's the youngest. He doesn't speak a word of English, right?
Wow.
And there's an account of this American officer who's wandering around looking for these kids because their parents are back at Ruddle Station in
Yeah.
Kentucky, hoping that their boys will come home. So there's this officer walking around, like asking some of these people, like, Do you know Stephen's the oldest? Do you know a Stephen Ruddle? Have you seen a Stephen Ruddle? And there's this Indian sitting, next to a tree, and it goes and it says, me, Stephen Ruddle. And so he takes the boys home. It's quite a
Yeah.
story, and there were a lot of stories like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, and talk about, well, I mean, that's just one of, yeah, like you said, a lot of stories on the frontier, very similar,
Mhm.
uh, complicated, wild time. I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
you know, um,
no question.
but yeah. Now, Ruddle Station, that would have been located near, um, trying to
That
think, my
I'm blanking. Is it on the Kentucky River? I should be asking you, Jameson. You're the Kentucky expert.
I know. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to, like, there's so many of these stations that you get into.
Yeah,
Um, I'm trying to think of too the was it Colonel Byrd that was during the Revolution though,
yeah. Well, it
and
was during that invasion that they were taken. So
yeah, and
I can get out
um,
my book and look up exactly where it was, but
it's north. I know it's in the northern part,
yeah, I think it's
considering
east
like
of Louisville
Lexington.
somewhere.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'm looking on a map here to see if it was identified, but I kind of didn't think it would be because it was pretty much done for after that. After
There
the
is a monument there.
hmm hmm well, anyway, a lot of those stations and stuff that I wish I would like one day to make a map of all the stations that
Yeah,
were created over time. That'd be really cool, but maybe it's already out there somewhere if it
I've
made it.
seen
I don't
one.
know.
I assume it's accurate, but I'm not expert enough to have
hmm
checked it.
hmm Well, and I'll just share the one that I was looking at. This the one of the Library of Congress here.
Uh-huh.
Um, give it a second there. You know, but this is 1792, and then you got Louisville here, you got Lexington, and this has a lot more. A lot more is there than would have been. You still have Bardstown down here. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking up in this area because this is the Kentucky River right here.
Yeah. Can you scroll
Um,
up just a little bit?
yeah, like zoom in a little too. Um, yeah, yeah. Kentucky River comes down here, and then it goes all the way
Do you see
down.
Drennan's Lick there? Go back up. So Drennan's Lick.
Oh, right here.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's another 8th Virginia guy, Joseph Carman, who settled near there, and he was out hunting
Okay.
buffalo one day, and he got. This is a family podcast, right?
Yes.
He got captured by Indians and dismembered at
Oh.
Drennan's Lick.
Oh. Wow. Well. Ouch.
Yeah,
Oh
I'm
boy.
not, and I can show you where Bowman Station was too if you go over to the Dix River. It's just a
Okay.
little bit east of Harrodsburg.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So right down here, you're gonna have
You see Bowman's right
right
there,
there,
front and
Dix
center.
River. Oh yeah, right there,
Yep,
Bowman's.
that's
Yep.
Bowman Station.
Because you got Logan's right here.
Yep.
That's what Saint Asaph, Whitley, uh, Danville, which that doesn't come along. But Harrodstown, Bowman's, yeah, right there, and um, yeah, Stroud Station, and then there's Martin Station. That yeah,
Oh, and there's Riddle Station. I think that's Ruddle.
Ruddle.
I think
Okay, well
that's
yeah,
it.
there we go, Ruddle Station.
Yep.
So yep, yep, and then you got Blue Licks right up here. So
Hmm.
not too. Yep. I really like this map. This is one of my favorite Kentucky maps.
Yeah,
But
it's a good map.
anyway, anyway.
There's
Um,
an image of it in my book.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
I got I got a picture of it in my class too.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so as far as the Eighth Virginia, what else do we got? They settle. Quite a few of them settle in Kentucky. Make stations, as we even
Mhm.
saw there. Um, what goes on down the road?
Well, so after the war, um, neither Virginia nor Congress has a penny to their name, right? And nobody's been paid.
No.
So which isn't great, right? So the one thing that Virginia has to give people is land. So actually, during the war, they set up a system where soldiers who enlisted for 3 years would get 100 acres in the West. Soldiers who enlisted for the duration of the war, in other words, probably longer than 3 years, or at least committing to the duration, would get 200 acres. Officers got more, a lot more. So
Mhm.
you had a uh, a big crush of veterans who were demanding the land after, actually during the war. If their enlistments expired in 1782, they were very eager to get their land.
Mhm.
So I'm actually finishing up a 3-part series on that process that maybe we can talk about in detail another time. But long and short is that a bunch of these guys headed west. First to Kentucky, then Ohio. Um, George Rogers Clark's men had a special zone of land they were given, which is now Indiana, where Clarksville is. um,
Mhm.
Virginia gave all of its land on the other side of the Ohio River to Congress to carve up new states. And so, eventually you end up, with settlement in Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, right? Um, uh, so and you've got Indian treaties. Congress treated the Indian tribes that had allied with the British as defeated enemies, right? So the
Yeah.
British evacuated the West, and we took that land from the Indians too. Um, Indians were allowed to remain in parts of it, but they were pretty clear that, hey, you lost, sorry. Except for a couple of
Yeah.
tribes in New York that had actually allied with Congress, they were allowed to keep their
Mhm.
land. So they were consistent as far as that went. Um, so the West settles up, right? Kentucky becomes a state. Um, a lot of 8th Virginia veterans are involved in that. And by the 1810s, 1820s, it's a state. It's settled. It's safe. And then you got a big event in 1825 when the last surviving major general of the Continental Army returns from France. This is the Marquis de
Mhm.
Lafayette we're talking about.
Yep.
Uh, he was 19 years old when he got his Major General's commission. Uh, and he goes on uh, I think there were 24 states at that time. So a 24 state tour for 2 years
Mhm.
to
Yep.
celebrate the 50th anniversary of independence at the invitation of President Monroe. Uh, Part of that is coming to Kentucky. I don't remember the
Mhm.
date, but it was in 1825. Uh, uh, Lexington wants to be the primary site for the celebration. It's the county, the county seat of Fayette County, named after the
Uh-huh.
Marquis, right? It's named after Lexington's named after the first battle of the Revolution, right?
Mhm.
So they think that they should be the primary location. They don't get that. Um, I assume that was Louisville, but nonetheless, they staged a gigantic celebration. Um, and the senior most veteran living there was none other than the 8th Virginia's Colonel Abraham Bowman. So he is next to the Marquis throughout the event for 2 days. He rides into town in a carriage with the Marquis. He sits next to him when the Marquis is giving his speech. Sits next to him at a table at an outdoor banquet for 1,400 people. Right, it's a big, big deal.
Yeah.
And when they ride into Lexington, they're just mobbed. Right. Remember, this
Uh-huh.
is this is veteran country. Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
After the
Yep.
war, the veterans went to Kentucky. So you had just hundreds, maybe thousands of veterans would come up and show, look, I'm missing a couple fingers. They were shot off at
Yeah.
Brandywine, where the Marquis de Lafayette was shot too. Right? They're really
Yeah.
excited. um, uh, and that so that lasts for a couple days, and then Lafayette rides off in his fancy carriage, and Bowman lived for I think another 13 years after that, but he was sort of the last surviving senior officer in
Hmm.
Kentucky. So
Yeah. That's a pretty good connection there.
yeah,
And I mean, he probably feel like a pretty big celebrity too, getting to hang out with Marquis de Lafayette and
yeah,
all that.
big stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the Bowman there, would you say? I mean, I know it's going to be hard, and this is a loaded question too. Like as far as all of them, I mean, James Knox would probably be my person, but that might be personal bias as well. Out of all the Eighth Virginia people or soldiers, officers included,
Mhm.
um, who do you think had the biggest impact on Kentucky, or is that
Oh,
too much? Uh,
that's a tough question, but I'm up for the challenge.
uh-huh.
So, so James Knox gets definitely special mention because he may, in fact, have been into the interior of Kentucky before Daniel Boone.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's one source. This is the daughter of James Logan. She
Hmm.
said that Knox got there first and told Daniel Boone about it,
Yeah.
and then Boone went. Right.
Hmm.
That's kind of a big deal if that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's one other source that seems to corroborate it. So if firsts count, uh, even if being second counts,
Uh-huh.
Knox I think deserves uh, attention.
Hmm.
Um, Bowman matters a lot, right?
Yeah.
He led a big group of people to settle at Bowman Station. Um, he was a big deal in Lexington. Uh, that family they were famous for being equestrians, and I have a theory
Hmm.
that they he was sort of one of the founders of the famous horse culture around
Hmm.
Lexington. I would love it if somebody would either corroborate that or tell me I'm wrong, but it's a theory I've got.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, his brothers, John Bowman and the others, they were very important out there as well. But I'm going to go back to James Knox because not only
Hmm.
was he maybe first, he went back and forth and led trains of settlers
Yeah.
into Kentucky. um, there's even one story where he's I forget where he started out, but he started out with 20 people or something, and as he went, uh, I think he started in a Stanton, Virginia, if I remember right. As he went, more and more people joined until he had something like 500 people in his back horse
Oh
train.
wow.
Two-thirds or three-quarters of them were children, right?
Yeah.
And
Phew.
he leads them, whatever it is, 250 miles from the Shenandoah Valley through the Cumberland Gap, probably to Crab Orchard.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
uh,
Right down the road.
so yeah, so he's a big deal,
Yeah.
and doesn't get enough attention.
No, no, no,
Oh,
no. I think we talked about
and Knox County,
uh-huh. That's what I was about
everybody
to say.
says is named after General Henry Knox. I'm pretty sure that's baloney. I think it's named after James Knox. We talked
Uh-huh.
about this on a previous podcast, Jameson, but
Uh-huh.
that's
Yeah.
right where Knox was active. In that period, they were naming counties after people just like him. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, when it was named, Henry Knox was a Federalist official in the government, and
Oh,
Kentucky was definitely not Federalist country,
that's right.
right?
That's right.
So
And
I
there's no
think
Hamilton County?
and there's a guy who wrote, I forget when, but there's an early source that says explicitly that Knox County was named after James Knox and not Henry Knox. So I don't think there's any official papers, but I'm convinced.
Yeah, I think so too. Um, yeah, and I mean, when they were, naming these counties, they were, I mean, standing around. Okay, this person, this person, this person. They were
Mhm.
naming them after, you know, those kind of people.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and and not
Okay.
and Knox was not a Virginia general. right? You've got a Muhlenberg County, you've got a
Mm-hmm.
Woodford County, right? These were Virginian generals.
Yeah.
Knox was
Yeah.
not a Virginian.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And now, I think we probably mentioned this before. Benjamin Logan, he wasn't in the 8th Virginia, was he?
No, but he and Knox were like BFF.
Oh yeah.
And in
Yeah.
fact,
Well, I mean,
Knox
married his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After Logan died, to be clear.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
just to clarify.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it would be great to know a little bit more about that time period, late in Knox's life.
Mhm.
I don't know if
Yep.
we'll ever be able to learn too much, but
Nope. Nope. Well, Gabe, thanks for coming on and talking about this more, 8th Virginia history. It's very captivating, a lot of good stuff, and I of course would encourage people to go get your book to dive even deeper in there. Real quick, how can people get that again?
yeah. So the title is "The Last Men Standing: The 8th Virginia and the American Revolution." I'll show it again. It's anywhere you buy books, it's on Amazon. Look for a discount. It's a high quality book on high quality paper with lots of pictures and maps, and that makes it a little bit pricier than the average book, but you can get a discount.
Mhm.
And I list those on my website. It's 8th number 8th Virginia.com.
Mhm. Yeah. Hey, more maps the better. I'm definitely a bit nerdy with maps,
Yep.
so they're
Yeah.
fun.
No, maps are important. You can't understand what happened without a good map.
Yep. Thanks again for coming on. Anything else before we go?
No, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah. Well, whenever you get your next book on the Virginia Ninth or the well, whatever it may be, let us know, and you're more than welcome to come back on.
All right. Thanks a bunch.
Yep. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/kyhistorypod. You've probably heard about Daniel Boone, but what about the rest of the frontiersmen who came to Kentucky and settled? That's what we want to bring to the Kentucky History Channel. The stories of the untold, the stories of those forgotten. One thing to expect on our channel is great Kentucky content. Some stories that you've never heard of. The Night Riders, who began in western Kentucky. Bloody Monday, the riots in Louisville. The assassination of Governor Goebel, the only governor ever assassinated in the United States. Stories from all over Kentucky, stories that are unforgettable once you've heard them. You can find out who counties in Kentucky are named after and how your county got started. From beginning to end, we plan to document every county in Kentucky, all 120. Reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and also leave a comment on one of our YouTube videos. You can also check out our podcast episodes. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. We're always seeking to find more Kentucky history so we can bring it to you. The viewers, the listeners, we want all the stories and all the events from Kentucky's great history to be told and shared everywhere.